He woke up that morning like any other day. The sun was just peeking through the curtains, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the small kitchen. He was used to mornings that were hurried but quiet. As a single dad, every day had its own routine, getting his child ready for school, packing lunch, and making sure nothing was forgotten. Life wasn't always easy, but he found small joys in the little moments, like the sound of his child's laughter or the quiet satisfaction of a day done well. After dropping his child off at school, he headed to work. His job didn't make him rich, but it was honest work, and it helped him provide for his little family. On the way, he noticed things he often overlooked: a neighbor struggling with heavy bags, an elderly man waiting at a bus stop, a mother juggling her children. He didn't stop for every little thing, but he always felt a pull toward helping when he could. That day, the city seemed busier than usual. People rushed past him, faces glued to phones, eyes staring at screens, minds lost in thoughts and deadlines. He walked faster, his own mind focused on work, but then he heard a sharp cry, a voice that sounded scared and panicked. He turned toward the sound and saw a small crowd gathered near the entrance of a tall office building. People were murmuring, some looking up at the building, others pacing nervously. He pushed through the crowd and saw her. She was pressed against the wall of an elevator, her hands gripping the edges as if she could hold herself steady against the fear that was written across her face. She was clearly panicking. Her breathing was fast, shallow and uneven, and tears were forming at the corners of her eyes. Something about her drew his attention, not her beauty or her clothes, but the raw fear and helplessness in that moment. He didn't think twice. He approached calmly and asked her if she was okay. She shook her head, words caught in her throat. The elevator, it stopped. "We're stuck," she managed to say between shallow breaths. He nodded, his mind already working, even though he wasn't a professional rescuer. He had faced emergencies before, at home with his child and in his community. He knew fear could make a person freeze, and he had to act fast. "All right," he said in a calm voice, keeping his own panic at bay. "We'll get you out of here. Just take deep breaths. I'm here and you're not alone." His words seemed to reach her. She nodded slightly, clinging to them like a lifeline. He examined the situation. The elevator buttons weren't responding, and there was no way to manually open the doors from the inside. He quickly pulled out his phone and called the building maintenance, explaining the situation clearly and calmly. While waiting, he stayed with her, talking to her in a way that distracted her from the fear. He asked about her day, her work, and what she liked to do outside the office. She hesitated at first, but slowly started answering, her voice shaky but growing steadier with every word. Minutes passed, but to her, it felt like hours. He kept her focused, making small jokes, sharing a little story about his child, and reminding her that the maintenance team was on the way. He didn't see himself as a hero. He was just doing what felt right. He wanted to make sure she felt safe, even if it was only through conversation. Finally, they heard footsteps and voices from outside the elevator. The maintenance team had arrived and was working quickly to get the doors open. Relief washed over her face. She smiled, a small, fragile smile, and whispered a quiet, "Thank you." But he could see in her eyes that it was more than just gratitude. It was astonishment that someone had stayed by her side, calm and supportive, without expecting anything in return. When the doors finally opened, she stepped out, taking a deep breath of fresh air as if she had been underwater for hours. She turned to him and said, "I don't know how to thank you enough. You really saved me." He just nodded, brushing it off. "Just glad you're safe," he said. Then, before she could respond, she was swept away by the busy life waiting for her. The phone calls, emails, and meetings that demanded her attention. He watched her leave, a strange mix of satisfaction and quiet longing lingering in him. It was just a small act, a brief moment in a long day, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it mattered more than he realized. Helping someone in need didn't require fame, money, or recognition. Sometimes all it took was presence, patience, and a willingness to care. As he walked away, heading back to his own responsibilities, he thought about the countless people in the world who went unnoticed, who needed help but had no one to turn to. He didn't know her story, and she didn't know his. But in that moment, their paths had crossed in a way that was real, human, and meaningful. And that, he realized, was enough. After that day in the elevator, life seemed to fall back into its usual rhythm. He went about his work, dealing with calls, meetings, and responsibilities, all while trying to balance being a father and provider. Some days were harder than others, but he never let his struggles show too much. He wanted his child to see strength, patience, and kindness, even when the world felt heavy. The memory of the businesswoman lingered in his mind more than he expected. He remembered the fear in her eyes, the way she clutched at the walls, and the small, fragile smile she gave him once she stepped out safely. For him, it was just a moment, a simple act of helping someone in need, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more there, a quiet connection that didn't need words. Meanwhile, she returned to her busy life, but that brief encounter had left a mark on her too. The image of him staying calm, guiding her through fear, and showing genuine concern kept replaying in her mind. She had grown so used to people rushing past her, ignoring her presence or treating her like just another colleague or client. But in that moment, someone had truly seen her as a human being, not just a professional to impress or a deadline to meet. Days passed. He continued with his routine, dropping his child at school, going to work, running errands, and managing bills. Life was busy, noisy, and sometimes exhausting. Yet, even in the middle of his daily chaos, he found himself wondering how she was doing. He told himself it didn't matter. After all, they were strangers, and their paths had crossed only briefly. But a small part of him hoped she was safe, calm, and somehow finding a bit of peace in her hectic world. For her, the memory of that day turned into something she couldn't ignore. She realized how rare it was to find someone who helped without expecting anything in return. She had seen kindness before, yes, but it was often buried under gestures that carried strings attached. This act was pure, simple, and selfless. She wanted to thank him properly, but her work never seemed to allow the time. Each day was filled with meetings, presentations, and emails. She tried to call, but the opportunity never seemed right. She sent a message once, hesitated, deleted it, and then convinced herself that it wasn't necessary. Meanwhile, he had his own quiet struggles. Life as a single parent was never easy. Bills piled up, school projects needed attention, and his child depended on him for both guidance and comfort. Some evenings were long and lonely, filled with worry about how he would manage everything. Yet he always found ways to smile and keep moving forward. The small joys of watching his child succeed at school, seeing their face light up at a joke, or sharing a quiet meal together made the challenges bearable. One afternoon, he was at the local grocery store, trying to finish a quick shopping run before picking up his child from school. The aisles were crowded, carts clattering, children running past, and the sound of checkout scanners beeping constantly. As he reached for a can on the top shelf, he thought about the elevator incident again. He didn't expect to ever see her again. Life had moved on, and so had he. Yet he couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, something meaningful could come from that brief encounter. She, on the other hand, was sitting in her office, staring out the window at the city below. Her desk was covered with papers, folders, and an endless stream of notifications on her phone, yet she couldn't focus. Her mind kept returning to him, the man who had stayed calm while she was trapped, the man who had been patient and kind when fear had taken over her. She realized she had never met someone who cared so genuinely without any expectation. That thought alone made her heart ache slightly. She wanted to find a way to let him know how much his kindness had meant to her, but she didn't know how. Days turned into a week. He continued his routine, unaware that she was thinking about him. She debated several times whether to leave a note, send an email, or even try to find him in person. But something always held her back. The timing never felt right, and fear of rejection or misunderstanding made her hesitate. She wanted it to be genuine, not forced or awkward. She wanted him to know that what he did mattered, not just as a rescue, but as a reminder that human kindness still existed in the world. During this time, he received a small surprise. One evening, after putting his child to bed, he found a note slipped under his apartment door. It was handwritten, simple and elegant. His name was at the top, followed by words that made his chest tighten. "I wanted to thank you," it began. "You may not realize it, but what you did meant more than you know. You helped me when I was scared, and you reminded me that there are people who care without expecting anything in return. I hope you understand how much this meant to me." He read the note several times, sitting at his kitchen table, the quiet of the apartment surrounding him. He didn't know what to say. His first thought was disbelief. Who would take the time to write such a note when life was so busy? But the more he read, the more he felt warmth in his chest. a sense of connection that he hadn't realized he was missing. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition, human recognition that he had done something meaningful. The note ended simply, "Thank you, truly. I hope our paths cross again." He held the paper in his hands, feeling an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. Hope. Hope that small acts of kindness could matter, that life could surprise him, and that even brief encounters could leave lasting marks. For the next few days, he carried the note with him everywhere, tucking it into his pocket during work, showing it to his child in secret, and reading it quietly when he needed a reminder that he wasn't invisible in the world. The memory of her fear, her gratitude, and her sincere words became a source of strength. It reminded him that his life, though busy and sometimes difficult, could have moments of beauty, connection, and meaning. She, on her side, finally felt a small sense of relief. She had expressed what she had been holding inside, even if indirectly, and it gave her a quiet comfort. She didn't know if she would ever see him again, but for now, her words had bridged the gap between strangers, creating a moment of understanding that was rare and precious. Even though their worlds were still separate, a bond had been formed, a bond that didn't need constant interaction or explanation. It was a quiet reminder that kindness, patience, and human connection could leave impressions far stronger than words or actions alone. Both of them carried that memory forward in different ways, but with the same recognition that life was better when people cared for each other, even in small, fleeting moments, and so life continued for him, filled with work, parenting, and responsibilities. But now there was a spark, a small but persistent feeling that maybe, just maybe, life could hold surprises, gratitude, and connections that reached beyond the ordinary. That spark would stay with him, growing quietly as he navigated the busy days ahead. Days turned into a week, and life went on like it always did. He continued with his routines, waking up early, making breakfast for his child, getting them ready for school, and rushing to work. At work, he answered calls, organized files, and helped his colleagues whenever he could. Life was busy, and the challenges of being a single parent never disappeared. Yet the memory of her note stayed with him. Every time he thought of it, he felt a strange warmth, like a small light shining in the midst of his busy, sometimes difficult life. For her, the week had been just as busy. She returned to her office, attending meetings and making presentations, but her mind kept drifting back to him. She remembered how calm and kind he had been in the elevator, how he had made her feel safe, and how he had spoken to her like she mattered as a human being, not just as a business professional. She had never expected someone to care so genuinely without asking for anything in return. That simple act of kindness had touched her more deeply than she realized. Despite the hectic pace of her life, she wanted to see him again. She wanted to express her gratitude in person, not just through a note. But every time she tried, circumstances got in the way. She planned to go to the building where it happened, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But she got stuck in a meeting or was pulled into an urgent project. She thought about calling him, but she didn't even know his full name or contact information. She began to feel a mix of hope and frustration, hope that their paths could cross again, frustration that the world seemed to make it impossible. Meanwhile, he didn't expect to hear from her again. He carried the note in his pocket like a small treasure, reading it quietly when he needed encouragement. Sometimes he shared it with his child, telling them that helping others could make a difference even in small ways. It became a gentle reminder for him to keep being kind, patient, and compassionate, even when life felt overwhelming. One morning, he was heading to work, walking through the crowded streets with his bag slung over his shoulder, and thoughts of deadlines and responsibilities filling his mind. As he passed by a busy cafe, he saw her through the glass window, sitting alone with her laptop open, papers scattered around her, and a cup of coffee steaming beside her. Their eyes met for a brief second, and he froze. She gave a small, hesitant smile, one that was both shy and relieved. He nodded slightly, unsure if he should approach, and she nodded back. It was a moment of recognition, but also of uncertainty. Neither of them moved immediately. They were both caught in the weight of their busy lives, the fear of awkwardness and the hope that this moment could mean something more. She looked down at her papers, then back at him, and finally took a deep breath. She stood up, gathering her things, and walked toward him. He felt his heart beat faster, a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. This wasn't just a simple encounter anymore. It felt important, like something significant was about to happen. When she reached him, she spoke softly, almost shyly. "I don't want to disturb you, but I wanted to thank you again. Really, from the bottom of my heart. That day in the elevator, you helped me when I was scared. You didn't just keep me safe, you reminded me that people can care without expecting anything back." His chest tightened, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. Words seemed too small for the gratitude she was expressing, yet he felt a deep connection in her honesty. He finally found his voice and said, "It was nothing. I just wanted to make sure you were safe, that's all." But she shook her head gently, her eyes searching his. "No, it was more than nothing. You stayed calm, patient, and kind. You didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have even stopped. That's why I wanted to see you, to tell you that it mattered." For a few moments, they just stood there in silence, surrounded by the noise of the city, the honking cars, the chatter of people, the clinking of cups in the cafe. But it felt as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. The simple act of human connection, something so small and ordinary, had become extraordinary. She smiled again, this time with more confidence. "I know life is busy and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I wanted to let you know that your kindness made a difference. It's not just about the elevator. It's about how you treat people, even strangers. That matters." He nodded, still feeling a mix of surprise, gratitude, and humility. He never thought that one brief moment could leave such a lasting impression on someone's life. As they spoke, he noticed something else. How exhausted she looked, despite her confident exterior. The long hours, responsibilities, and constant pressure were visible in her posture and eyes. He realized that while he had been helping her in a moment of fear, she had her own battles every day that no one might see. That thought made him respect her even more. They were both navigating life, each in their own way, yet their paths had crossed in a way that felt meaningful. She paused, as if considering something important. "I don't know if I'll ever have another chance to see you like this," she said quietly. "But I hope you understand. What you did mattered more than you know. It gave me hope, and it reminded me that there are still people in this world who care without expecting anything in return." He swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. He never imagined that a small gesture could have such a profound effect on someone else's life. Before they parted, she added, "I hope our paths cross again someday. I'd like to stay in touch if that's okay." He nodded slowly, still processing the weight of her words. "I'd like that," he said softly. Even as they went their separate ways that day, there was a sense that something had shifted, a quiet, unspoken bond formed through trust, kindness, and genuine human connection. For the rest of the week, both of them continued their daily lives, but with a subtle difference. He carried a quiet hope, a gentle reminder that kindness could ripple beyond the moment it was given. She carried gratitude and a renewed belief that even in her busy world there were people who truly cared. They both thought about each other in fleeting moments on the way to work, during quiet breaks or late at night, but without pressure or expectation. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they both began to understand a truth about life. That small acts of compassion could leave a mark far deeper than grand gestures ever could. That a single moment shared with sincerity could ripple through days and weeks, affecting lives in ways neither of them could fully predict. That week became a turning point, not because of anything dramatic, but because of the quiet recognition that life sometimes gave unexpected gifts. A moment of fear in an elevator had become a lesson in patience, kindness, and human connection. And even though neither of them knew what would come next, they both felt ready for it, carrying the memory and hope forward into the days that followed. Days passed after their quiet meeting at the cafe, and life slowly returned to its usual rhythm for both of them. He continued his work and parenting responsibilities, juggling bills, school runs, and chores. Every day felt long, but he found small moments of joy in the laughter of his child, in the quiet satisfaction of a task completed, or even in the simple beauty of the sunset. Yet in the back of his mind, he often thought about her note, her words, and the brief time they had shared. It wasn't just gratitude he remembered. It was the reminder that even small acts of kindness could matter in ways he hadn't imagined. For her, life was equally busy. Meetings, deadlines, and constant responsibilities filled every moment. Yet the memory of him, the calm, kind man who had helped her in her moment of fear, never left her mind. She kept replaying the day of the elevator, the way he had stayed patient, the way he had spoken to her with understanding and care. It had made her feel human, seen and safe at a time when panic had taken over her thoughts. She wanted to repay that kindness in some meaningful way, but she didn't know how. Then one morning she made a decision. She realized that waiting for the right moment was only creating more distance. If she wanted to express her gratitude, she would have to do it now, in a way that was personal, thoughtful, and sincere. She thought about what could really make a difference. Not just words, but a gesture that would show him that she truly valued what he had done. After some consideration, she arranged a meeting. She didn't announce it publicly, nor did she want it to feel formal. She just wanted to make sure he understood how much his actions had meant to her. He was at work that morning helping a client with some paperwork when he received a message. It wasn't long or complicated, just a simple request to meet at a nearby cafe during his lunch break. He hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was really her. Then he remembered her note, her words at the cafe, and the quiet connection they had shared. A small spark of curiosity and hope lit up inside him, and he agreed to meet. When he arrived at the cafe, she was already there, sitting at a table with a calm, warm smile. Her presence immediately put him at ease, but at the same time he felt a strange nervousness. He didn't know what to expect. She motioned for him to sit, and he did, trying to hide the mix of anticipation and curiosity swirling inside him. "I'm glad you came," she said softly, her eyes sincere. "I wanted to do this in person, to really let you know how much that day in the elevator meant to me. I think sometimes we underestimate the impact of small actions, but yours mattered more than I can explain." He listened, feeling his chest tighten. He wasn't used to being recognized like this, especially for something he considered ordinary. She continued, "I've been thinking about it a lot. You were calm, patient, and kind when I was scared. You didn't rush me, you didn't act like it was inconvenient, you just helped. Most people wouldn't have done that. I wanted to make sure you knew that what you did mattered. And it didn't just affect that moment, it affected me in ways I can't easily put into words." Her voice shook slightly, but it was steady enough to show how deeply she meant what she was saying. He remained quiet, letting her words sink in. He had helped her because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected recognition. Yet hearing her speak with such honesty, such thoughtfulness, made him realize that even the smallest gestures could ripple far beyond what he imagined. She reached into her bag and handed him a small envelope. "I wanted to give you something," she said, "not because I want to repay you, but because I want you to understand how much this mattered. You helped me when I needed it, and I hope this can help you in some way too." He took the envelope with a quiet, surprised expression, unsure what to expect. When he opened it, he found a letter and a small gift, a thoughtful gesture that could make a real difference in his life. The letter was full of gratitude, admiration, and respect, acknowledging not just his actions in the elevator, but the kindness, patience, and humanity he showed every day. The gift was practical, something he could use for himself or for his child, a reminder that someone had seen his struggles and cared enough to make life a little easier. He looked up at her, speechless. Words failed him, because nothing he could say would truly capture the impact of her gesture. He felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, humility, surprise, and even a touch of disbelief. He had never expected that a small act of kindness could lead to such a meaningful connection, let alone that someone would take the time to express it so sincerely. "I don't know what to say," he finally managed, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "I didn't do it for recognition, but thank you. Truly." She smiled gently, understanding that the simplicity of his words was enough. "You don't have to say more," she replied. "I just wanted you to know that you made a difference, and that even small, selfless acts, they matter. They really do." He nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. In that moment, he realized that life had a way of surprising him, rewarding him not with money, fame, or attention, but with the profound understanding that he could touch someone's life in a meaningful way. They spent a few more minutes talking, sharing small stories and enjoying the quiet space of the cafe. She listened as he spoke about his child, his work, and the little joys and challenges of his everyday life. He listened as she spoke about her career, her own stresses, and how that brief moment of kindness had reminded her to look for humanity in the people around her. It was a conversation filled with honesty, warmth, and mutual respect, a rare connection that didn't need to be rushed or forced. When they finally left, they did so with a quiet understanding that something significant had changed. He felt lighter, encouraged, and seen, while she felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing she had expressed her gratitude in a way that truly mattered. Neither of them knew what the future held, but in that moment, they both carried a profound awareness of how simple acts of kindness could ripple into life-changing experiences. As he walked away, the envelope still in his hand, he realized that life could be unpredictable, challenging and sometimes unfair, but it could also be beautiful, surprising and deeply rewarding in ways that words often failed to capture. He had learned that helping someone, even in a small way, could create connections that lasted far beyond the moment itself, and she had learned that taking the time to express gratitude and recognition could make a difference not just for her, but for the person whose life she touched. That day became a turning point, a moment where two strangers found understanding, respect, and hope in each other. It was a reminder that the world, despite its chaos and busyness, still had room for kindness, empathy, and human connection. And both of them carried that reminder forward, quietly but powerfully, as they returned to their lives, forever changed by a brief moment that had blossomed into something meaningful. After that meaningful meeting at the cafe, life began to feel different for him. Not because anything had drastically changed, but because he carried a new sense of hope and warmth in his heart. Every day still came with responsibilities, work, parenting, bills, and the little struggles that never seemed to end. But now there was a lightness in his steps, a quiet reassurance that even small acts of kindness could ripple into something far bigger than he imagined. He returned to his routines with a renewed perspective. Mornings were still busy, filled with preparing breakfast, waking his child, and ensuring school lunches were packed properly. Evenings were often filled with homework, chores, and bedtime stories. But now he noticed small moments more clearly. The laughter of his child felt brighter. The quiet calm of the apartment in the evening felt warmer, and even the sound of the city outside his window seemed a little softer. Life in its ordinary rhythm felt a little more meaningful. The letter and small gift she had given him became more than just a gesture. They became a reminder. Every time he saw the note or glanced at the little gift, he remembered the power of kindness, the way it could lift someone up even when they didn't expect it, and the way it could create a connection between two people who had barely known each other. He shared the story quietly with his child, teaching lessons about empathy, patience, and the importance of helping others without expecting anything in return. His child listened wide-eyed, inspired by the simple heroism of their parent and the fact that kindness could leave such a lasting mark. Meanwhile, she returned to her life with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced before. She had been busy, always focused on deadlines, meetings, and responsibilities, yet taking the time to recognize someone else's goodness had reminded her of the human side of life. She realized that success wasn't only about accomplishments or achievements, it was also about noticing, appreciating, and valuing the people around her. That small act of gratitude, acknowledging someone's genuine kindness, had made her feel more connected to the world and more grounded in herself. Their lives continued separately, yet both carried the impact of that day forward. For him, it inspired him to look at the world with a renewed sense of optimism. He noticed the people around him more, the little struggles they faced, and the opportunities to offer a helping hand. Even small gestures like holding a door open, offering a kind word, or simply listening became acts of meaning. Each time he helped someone, he remembered the businesswoman and the note she had given him, realizing that kindness could ripple in ways he could never predict. For her, the experience became a benchmark in her life, a reminder that even in the midst of a busy and sometimes harsh world, there were still people who cared deeply, acted selflessly, and made a difference without expecting anything in return. She carried the memory of his calm, patient demeanor, and the way he had reassured her in a moment of fear. It reminded her that humanity, compassion, and genuine care could exist even in unexpected places, and that expressing gratitude could be just as powerful as giving help itself. Weeks passed, and the connection between them, though quiet and unspoken, remained significant. They occasionally ran into each other, sharing small smiles, brief conversations, or even casual greetings. Each encounter was warm, friendly, and filled with an unspoken acknowledgement of the bond that had formed through a single, impactful moment. It wasn't romantic or forced, It was genuine, human, and meaningful in its simplicity. One afternoon, he found himself reflecting on the journey. He thought about the elevator, her panic, his calm reassurances, and the note she had given him. He realized how much that one moment had shaped his outlook. It had reminded him of the importance of empathy, patience, and selflessness, not just in dramatic moments but in everyday life. And it had taught him that small gestures, when made sincerely, could carry more weight than grand actions done for recognition or reward. She, too, found herself thinking back on that day. It reminded her to pause, notice, and appreciate the human side of life. She had been caught up in a world of deadlines, numbers, and expectations, but his simple act of kindness had reminded her that human connection, understanding, and compassion mattered just as much, if not more. She carried that lesson into her interactions with colleagues, friends, and even strangers, noticing moments where she could bring kindness, patience, or understanding into someone else's life. In their own ways, both of them had grown. He had grown in patience, humility, and understanding, realizing that even ordinary people could make extraordinary differences in the lives of others. She had grown in gratitude, awareness, and empathy, understanding that recognizing and valuing someone else's goodness could be transformative. Their encounter had not only affected that moment in the elevator, but it had also created a ripple that touched multiple aspects of their lives, teaching lessons they would carry forever. As life continued, their paths sometimes crossed in unexpected ways. Sometimes it was a brief nod in a hallway, a smile on a street corner, or a passing word at the grocery store. Each time they felt a quiet connection, a reminder that human kindness and recognition could endure beyond a single interaction. It was subtle, yet powerful, like a gentle thread tying their lives together across the ordinary moments of daily life. Ultimately, the story of that day in the elevator became more than just an incident. It became a lesson in humanity, teaching both of them and anyone who might hear the story in the future about the power of empathy, patience, and kindness. It showed that one small action done sincerely and without expectation could leave a lasting impression on someone's life. And it showed that taking the time to express gratitude could ripple just as far, touching hearts, inspiring hope, and creating connections that endured. He returned to his family, work, and life with a quiet confidence, knowing that the world could still hold good people, unexpected kindness, and moments of genuine connection. She returned to her busy schedule, but with a renewed awareness that even in the chaos, noticing and valuing human goodness mattered. They had both been changed, not by wealth, recognition, or fame, but by the simplest human values: compassion, patience, and gratitude. And in that quiet, unspoken understanding, they found something truly rare. A reminder that life, even in its busiest and most challenging moments, could be filled with unexpected gifts, lasting connections, and the profound truth that one small act of kindness could change a life forever. From that day forward, both of them moved forward with a subtle but enduring hope. Hope that the world could be better, that people could matter deeply to each other, and that even the smallest gestures made sincerely could leave a mark that time would never erase. It was a lesson carried in their hearts, quietly shaping the way they saw themselves, each other, and the world around them.